The moment you decide to take control of your money is the moment you begin to take control of your future. You see, age doesn't disqualify you. Indecision does. Because it's not too late. Not if you're willing to think differently starting today. Now, let me say something a little philosophical. Money is not just a currency. It's a consequence. It's what shows up when your habits, your thinking, and your actions align. Most people spend their lives chasing money. But here's the secret: the wealthy don't chase, they attract. And they attract because they've learned the principle. Don't work harder for money, teach money to work harder for you. You work 8 hours a day for income. But what if your dollars work 24 hours a day for freedom? That's not just investing, that's philosophy. Money is obedient, but it only follows those who lead it with clarity, discipline, and purpose. So the real question isn't, how much do you earn? The question is, what are you doing with what you earn? Because here's what I know. If you change what you do with $1, you'll never be broke again, no matter your age. Let me tell you something that changed the way I looked at life and money. No matter how old you are, the clock doesn't care. It's ticking for all of us. But the good news is, while you can't pause time, you can leverage it. Most people, they trade their hours for dollars, and for a while, that's fine. We all start somewhere. But if you're still doing that at 35, 45, or 55 without a better plan in motion, then you're building someone else's dream instead of your own. Working harder isn't always the answer. Working smarter is. And that means making sure not every dollar you earn comes only from your sweat and time. There's a world of difference between wages and profits. Wages make you a living, yes, but profits? They make you a fortune. See, wages stop when you stop. But profits, passive income, returns from assets, those can continue while you sleep. I remember a season when I was still running from appointment to appointment, paycheck to paycheck. I thought being busy meant being productive. I was wrong. I was just being used up. Then I asked myself, how much of what I earned last month came in while I was doing something else, like resting, learning, or even sleeping? The answer was painful. Nothing. That's when the real shift began. The moment you realize your income is completely tied to your presence, you've hit a ceiling. And life after 30, it comes with responsibilities that demand more than just your hours. It demands strategy. Every dollar you earn from now on should be like an employee. You don't just let it sit around. You give it a task. You say, go out there and grow, find me more, or go protect something important, or go provide for something I care about, because if your money has no assignment, it'll find trouble. Idle money is like idle time, it disappears, usually without value. I started small, a savings account that earned a little interest, a mutual fund that slowly compounded, a small business that sold while I was off the clock. You don't need to own a skyscraper to build passive income. You just need intention, even a side hustle done wisely, automated tools, royalties, a smart investment, they count. Start where you are, but start. And here's what I'll ask you now. What part of your income is working while you're asleep? If the answer is none, then it's time to wake up and build something that doesn't sleep. Most people spend their early years learning how to survive. They figure out how to earn just enough, pay the bills, maybe tuck a little away if they're lucky. But there comes a time, especially after 30, when survival isn't enough. You've got responsibilities now, real ones. A family to care for, a future to plan for, and a body that doesn't recover like it did in your 20s. And if you're still living with the financial understanding of your younger self, you're not just falling behind, you're walking blindfolded through a minefield. See, the rules of the money game don't change just because you turn 30. But the cost of ignorance gets higher. When you're young, a financial mistake might cost you a few weeks. When you're older, it can cost you years. That's why I say, don't just collect paychecks, collect wisdom. Don't just save receipts, save principles. Because in this unpredictable world, financial intelligence is not a luxury. It's armor. You don't have to become a Wall Street genius. I'm not asking you to start trading options or study the Federal Reserve, but you do need to understand how money works, how it flows in, how it leaks out, how to keep more of it and put it to work. Learn about compound interest, the quiet magic that turns $1 into a fortune when given time and patience. Understand debt, how it can serve you or strangle you. Learn the difference between an asset and a liability. Know how taxes eat at your returns and how inflation slowly steals from your pocket. I once met a man in his 40s who had worked 20 years straight. Loyal, dependable, never missed a paycheck. But he'd never read a book on money. Not one. And now, when prices rose and his job was shaky, he panicked. Not because he wasn't hardworking, but because he wasn't prepared. Don't let that be you. One book can start a new chapter. That's what happened for me. I picked up a simple little book on financial basics and it opened a window. Then another, then another. Knowledge doesn't just protect you, it multiplies you. So start with this challenge. Read one book on money this month. Just one. Highlight it. Write in it. Talk about it. Let it confront you. Because when you learn something new, you become someone new. And if you want to have more, you must become more. Most people spend their lives chasing a paycheck. Clock in, clock out. Earn, spend, repeat. And for a time, that works. But let me tell you, paychecks have a ceiling. And worse, they depend on you showing up every day. The moment you stop, the income stops too. That's not freedom, that's a treadmill. If you're over 30 and still relying only on your active income, it's time to rethink the plan. The truth is, your body will tire before your bills ever do. Wealthy people live by a different rule. They build assets, income-producing engines that keep working even when they don't. And here's what's beautiful about assets. They never take sick days. They don't show up late. They don't ask for raises. And they don't burn out. Assets quietly go to work every day, compounding, growing, and multiplying. You can be sleeping, traveling, or recovering, and they're still producing. That's what it means to make your money work for you. Now, I'm not talking about becoming some real estate mogul overnight. You start simple. Maybe it's a small rental property that pays you a few hundred a month. Maybe it's a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks companies that send you a check every quarter just for owning a piece of them. Maybe it's a side hustle that slowly becomes a real business, something digital, scalable, and low overhead. The point isn't to get rich overnight. The point is to plant something today that grows into freedom tomorrow. I remember a friend of mine who worked full-time and slowly bought vending machines, just one at first. He placed it in a small warehouse. Every month, it made a little money. Then he bought another, then another. Within 5 years, those machines were paying him more than his job. Not because he had some special degree, but because he had the courage to start. Every fortune starts with a seed, a decision. You don't need $1 million to build an asset. You need clarity, consistency, and commitment. And you need to stop waiting for the perfect time. There is no perfect time. There is only now. So here's your assignment. Identify one asset you could start building within the next 90 days. Something manageable, something real. Don't just think about it, write it down. Because ideas are cheap. But the decision to act, that's where freedom begins. Most people think wealth is built through big wins, lucky breaks, or moments of genius. But I'll tell you the truth. Wealth is built through small disciplines repeated daily over time. It's not about dramatic action, it's about consistent systems. And here's the real secret. The less you rely on willpower, the more likely you are to win. Because willpower fades. Motivation fluctuates. But systems don't forget, they don't skip days, and they don't get tired. If you wait until you feel like saving money, you won't do it. If you tell yourself, I'll invest when I'm ready, you'll always be waiting. That's why the wise don't leave their financial future up to moods or moments, they automate it. Automation removes the debate. It removes the question. It turns wealth into a default setting, not a hopeful intention. Now, when I started turning my finances around, I didn't trust my own discipline. So I created a structure that didn't need it. I set up a system where part of every dollar I earned went automatically into savings before I could even touch it. I treated my savings like a non-negotiable bill. It went out like rent, like electricity. No arguments. And then I added automation to my investments. A small amount went straight into a mutual fund every month, rain or shine, good month or bad month. That rhythm changed everything. Because wealth doesn't grow from what you intend to save. It grows from what you actually put away again and again. I met a young couple once. They earned average salaries, nothing flashy. But every month, they had automatic transfers set, 10% to savings, 10% to investments. After 10 years, they had built a six-figure portfolio. Not because they got lucky, but because they got consistent. Their system was boring, but it was beautiful. That's the magic of automation. It turns money into a machine. It protects you from your own bad days. It doesn't ask you how you're feeling. It just keeps working. And over time, it builds something incredible. It builds options. It builds freedom. So here's the assignment for this week. Set up automatic transfers. Even if it's just $50, even if it feels small. The size doesn't matter, the system does. Because once it's automatic, it's no longer about discipline, it's about design. And your future should never be left to chance, it should be built by design. You cannot fix what you will not face. And that's why I say your financial mirror is one of the most important tools in your journey to making money work for you. Because if you don't know where your money is going, I guarantee it's going somewhere you didn't intend. You see, most people don't have a money problem. They have a clarity problem. They're living by feel instead of by facts. And that's dangerous ground to stand on. I remember years ago, I was earning a decent living, but I always seemed to be behind. No matter how hard I worked, there was more month left at the end of the money. One day, a mentor looked at me and said, "Show me your numbers." I said, "Well, I don't really know exactly." He smiled and said, "Then you're not in control. You're just reacting." And that stung. But it woke me up. That's the day I started writing things down. At first, it was messy little notebooks, slips of paper. I tracked everything, what came in, what went out, where it went, how often. And in just a few weeks, I learned more about myself than any motivational seminar had ever taught me. I saw patterns $300 a month on eating out. Subscriptions I didn't even remember signing up for. Small purchases that added up to big leaks. And I'll tell you something, once you start tracking, you start changing. Not because someone forced you, but because the truth is powerful. The truth helps you make better choices. It builds awareness. And from awareness comes control. And when you feel in control of your money, you start making it work for you, not the other way around. I met a gentleman once in his 40s, good income, no savings. He said, "I don't know where it all goes." I handed him a notebook and said, "Find out." A month later, he came back with his eyes wide open. He said, "I was losing $800 a month to things I don't even value." That realization gave him back his power. So here's your assignment. For the next 30 days, track every single dollar. Yes, every coffee, every tip, every transfer. Not to judge, but to see. This is not about guilt, it's about clarity. Because once you see the truth, you can start shaping a new direction. You may not change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction tonight. No one cares about your money more than you do. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you take back your power. You see, there's a temptation, especially as we get older, to quietly hope that someone, something, somewhere will come along and fix our financial situation. A raise, an inheritance, a government policy, a lucky break. But let me tell you plainly, that's not a strategy, that's a wish. And wishes don't build wealth, decisions do. There came a moment in my own life when I had to realize that no one was going to rescue me. Not the company I worked for, not the economy, not my friends. I had to stop looking out the window and start looking in the mirror. Because real change, lasting financial independence, begins when you stop outsourcing your destiny and start taking ownership of it. You are the CEO of your financial life. Not just the worker, not the assistant, the CEO. And the first task of a good CEO, take responsibility. Not for what happened in the past, but for what happens next. That means owning your mistakes without shame and owning your future without excuse. The moment you say, "This is up to me," your whole life starts to shift. I once knew a man who blamed his employer for his lack of savings. Every time we spoke, it was, "If only they paid more. If only prices were lower." And I finally asked him, "What would change in your life if you made $10,000 more per year?" He paused and then said, "I'd probably just spend more." That's when it clicked for him. The issue wasn't his paycheck, it was his plan or lack of one. You can't control everything, but you can control your response. You can control what you learn, how you save, where you spend, and what future you build. And when you start living that way, intentionally, responsibly, you become a force that no economy can stop. So here's the assignment. Write your personal wealth mission statement, not for anyone else, for you. One paragraph that declares what kind of financial life you're committed to building and why it matters. Put it somewhere visible. Read it often. Let it guide your decisions, because the major key to your better future is you. You can live with a budget and still be broke in spirit. You can track every dollar and still be lost. Why? Because money management is not just about rules, it's about values. A budget helps you control behavior, but a philosophy, that shapes your character. And character, not math, is what determines long-term wealth. You see, a budget tells you what to do with your money, but a philosophy tells you why. And the why always drives the how. When people only use budgets, they often treat money like a prison. Can I afford this? Is this in the budget? But when you have a philosophy, you start asking deeper questions. Does this reflect my values? Does this purchase serve my long-term mission? Years ago, I met a man who made more money than most people I knew, but he never seemed happy. His spending was all status cars, clothes, parties, but no peace, no purpose. He was trying to buy admiration instead of building assets. I asked him one day, what do you believe money is for? And he couldn't answer. That's when I realized without a philosophy, wealth becomes noise. Let me offer you a contrast. I once visited a farmer who lived simply but was wealthy in the truest sense. He told me, I only spend on 3 things, seeds, books, and people. That was his philosophy. Invest in what grows, what teaches, and what connects. Simple, but powerful. And his life reflected that clarity. So what's yours? Don't complicate it. 3 words will do. Maybe it's earn, grow, give, or save, invest, serve. The words don't matter as much as what they mean to you. Because when your money has a mission, your spending gains discipline, your income gains purpose, and your financial life gains direction. This is why the wealthy don't just budget, they operate by a personal code. They ask, what kind of person am I becoming with the way I use money? Because success is not one big act. It's a few simple disciplines, practiced every day and guided by a clear philosophy. So your assignment is simple but important. Define your money philosophy in 3 words. Write them down. Reflect on them before your next purchase. Let them be your compass. Because when money is guided by philosophy, it stops being a burden and starts becoming a tool for meaning, for freedom, and for legacy. Let me tell you something about pleasure. It's not the enemy. But timing is everything. We live in a world that whispers, you deserve it now. And that message, it's dangerous. Because it teaches people to spend before they build, indulge before they prepare, and enjoy before they've earned. But the wise learn a different art. Not denial, just delay. When I was younger, I wanted what everyone else had. The latest gadgets, nice dinners out, the feeling of reward. But one day my mentor asked me, would you rather feel rich now or be rich later? That hit me hard. Because the truth is, most people aren't spending on yachts or luxury cars. They're losing wealth slowly through coffees, subscriptions, impulse buys, comfort spending, 10 here, 20 there, no pain, no alarm, just slow erosion. I remember a season in my life where I paused my Friday night dinners out, not because I was broke, but because I was building. I redirected that money into a simple savings plan. It wasn't much, maybe $60 a week. But you know what that turned into over a year? Over $3,000. Enough to start a small investment. That decision created momentum. And that's what delay gives you, not punishment, but power. The point is never to live a life of constant restraint. No, life is meant to be enjoyed, but you must choose when to enjoy it. When the foundation is laid, when the future is secured, when the money has done its job, protected, multiplied, and provided. That's the moment for reward. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." So many spend not because they need something, but because they haven't trained themselves to wait. The problem isn't the purchase, it's the habit. And habits build or break fortunes. So here's your challenge this week. Pick 3 small comforts to pause. Not cancel forever, just delay. Could be skipping the delivery meals, could be pressing pause on a monthly subscription. Take that money, even if it's $5, $20, $50, and move it toward growth. Maybe it's savings, maybe it's a course, maybe it's an investment fund. But move it with intention, because when you learn to delay without resentment, you build a kind of strength that money can't buy the strength of someone who's in control. And once you master that, your money begins to obey you. One of the greatest tragedies I've seen is people who build something of value only to leave behind confusion, not because they didn't love their family, not because they didn't care, but because they never taught. They built wealth, but not wisdom. And the next generation spent in 5 years what took 30 to earn simply because they didn't know. Legacy isn't just about the bank account. It's about the mindset, the philosophy, the behaviors that got you there. So if you're in the process of building, and I hope you are, then you must also be in the process of teaching. Because every lesson you've learned came at a cost. And passing it on multiplies the value of that cost. I remember early in my journey sitting down with my daughter and showing her a yellow legal pad on it, my budget, my goals, my notes. She was still young, but she saw something that day. She saw that money didn't just happen, it was planned, tracked, directed. Later she told me, "I didn't remember the numbers, Dad. I remembered that you cared about the numbers." That stuck with me. People don't always absorb every detail, but they catch your attitude toward money, your seriousness, your discipline, your consistency. I'm not talking about lecturing your spouse or giving your kids a finance textbook. I'm talking about sharing the journey. Sit down once a week. Talk about the budget. Talk about what you're investing in. Talk about a mistake you made and what you learned. Bring your wisdom into the light, not to impress, but to prepare. Remember, you don't have to know everything. You just have to share what you know. Tell a friend about the book you're reading. Help a coworker understand how you set up your automatic savings. Mention to your sibling why you decided to pause that monthly subscription. Little seeds. Quiet, simple actions. But they grow into oak trees when they're planted in someone else's mind. You may think, "I'm still learning." Good, that's the best time to teach, while the lessons are fresh, while the passion is high. Because what's easy to do, like share a simple insight, is also easy not to do. And the difference between impact and isolation is often one conversation. So this week, have that conversation with a child, a partner, a friend, not to lecture, to connect, because when you teach as you build, you don't just grow money, you grow people. And that is true wealth. No matter how many books you read or accounts you follow, wealth will never be something you stumble into. It is not found, it is become. You attract wealth by the kind of person you decide to be, not by the balance in your bank account. And so, the final step in making your money work for you isn't in spreadsheets or budgets or even investments. It's in the mirror. When I began my journey, I was broke, but that wasn't the problem. The real problem was that I was a broke thinker. I thought like a consumer. I wanted fast, easy, comfortable. But wealth has no interest in those who chase ease. It follows those who build discipline, character, and clarity. I remember the day my mentor said, "You're asking the wrong question, Jim. Stop asking what you want to get. Start asking who you need to become to deserve it." That was the turning point. So let me ask you, who are you becoming? Because your financial life will rise or fall to the level of your identity. If you see yourself as a spender, you'll spend. If you see yourself as someone who just gets by, you'll always just get by. But the moment you shift your identity even a little, everything begins to change. That's not just philosophy, that's psychology. Let me give you a practical example. I used to say, I'm not a numbers person. I'd avoid my accounts. I wouldn't track anything. I was living by emotion, not intention. Then one day I changed the script. I said, I'm now someone who knows his numbers. It wasn't flashy, but it was powerful. I started writing down every expense. I started budgeting, not perfectly, but consistently. And over time, I became the kind of man wealth could trust. That's the secret. Wealth is loyal. It sticks to people who treat it with respect, who grow themselves to handle more. So stop chasing numbers. Chase growth. Stop asking, how much do I need? Start asking, who do I need to become? The first question leads to pressure. The second leads to progress. So right now, write it down. I'm no longer someone who, maybe you're no longer someone who avoids the truth about their finances. I am now someone who, maybe you're now someone who faces their future with clarity and courage. Because in the end, the greatest return on investment isn't your portfolio. It's your transformation. If you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. It's your time, your move. Let's build wealth from the inside out.